Standing on the flight deck of the USS Truman, Lieutenant Commander Soren Vale feels the sting of public humiliation as the XO berates her. "Get off my flight deck," he orders, while crew members smirk behind their hands. She walks away with quiet dignity, but the whispers follow. They think they've seen the last of her authority. They have no idea who she really is. When alarms suddenly blare and the carrier's weapon systems activate on their own, every officer freezes. On every screen flashes the same message: clearance level 0 required, and only one person aboard has it. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about hidden strengths and moments of vindication, consider subscribing for more tales of justice served. Lieutenant Commander Soren Vale stood at the edge of the flight deck, the rising sun casting long shadows across the massive expanse of naval steel. The air vibrated with the thunderous roar of F-35 engines as jets launched into the dawn sky. Despite 5 years in the Navy, Vale still felt the visceral thrill of flight operations, the choreographed chaos, the precise movements, the raw power harnessed by human ingenuity. She was not supposed to be here. Systems analysts rarely ventured onto the flight deck during active operations, but Vale had always been drawn to the action. At 36, she was neither young enough to be forgiven rookie mistakes, nor senior enough to command automatic respect. Her slight build and quiet demeanor often led others to underestimate her, a mistake they rarely made twice. From the island structure overlooking the deck, Captain Adridge Blackwell observed the operations with his XO, Commander Thaddeus Merrick. Their conversation carried on the wind to where Vale stood. "Beijing's getting bolder," Blackwell said, binoculars trained on the horizon. 3 destroyer groups within 50 nautical miles. Merrick nodded grimly. "They're testing our response times, probing for weaknesses." "Then let's not show them any," Blackwell replied. Vale's attention shifted to a commotion near one of the fighters prepared for launch. Lieutenant Zafar Rehan, a pilot she recognized from mission briefings, was gesturing animatedly at his aircraft's diagnostic panel while deck crew swarmed around him. Merrick's voice crackled over the deck communications. "What's the holdup with Lightning 4-1? "Avionics fault, sir," came the reply. "Working to identify." Vale moved closer, hearing fragments of increasingly frustrated conversation. The launch window was closing. Without thinking, she approached the group, recognizing the pattern of errors on the diagnostic screen. "It's a firmware conflict," she said, causing heads to turn. "The new tactical package is fighting with the baseline avionics." Deck Chief Lachlan Knox stepped between her and the aircraft. "With all due respect, Commander, you shouldn't be here. This is a restricted area during flight ops." "I understand, Chief, but I've seen this before. There's a bypass sequence that should clear it." Rehan, the pilot, looked desperately between Knox and Vale. "The window's closing, Chief." After a moment's hesitation, Knox stepped aside. "Make it quick." Vale accessed the diagnostic panel and entered a complex sequence of commands. The error messages cleared immediately, replaced by all green status indicators. "That's it?" Rehan asked, surprised. "That's it," Vale confirmed. "The full patch will come in the next update, but this will hold you until you return." A sudden gust of turbulence from a passing aircraft rocked the deck. A cargo pallet, improperly secured during the rush, broke free from its moorings and skidded across the deck, stopping meters from a fuel line. Deck crews rushed to secure it. Before Vale could move, Commander Merrick's voice boomed across the deck. "What is going on here?" He stormed toward them, face flushed with anger. Behind him, Captain Blackwell watched from the elevated position of the island, making no move to intervene. "Lieutenant Commander Vale," Merrick said, his voice carrying deliberately for all nearby to hear. "Who authorized your presence on my flight deck during active operations?" "Sir, I was just—" "You're a systems analyst, not flight crew. You've endangered this carrier and its personnel with your unauthorized intervention." "Sir, there was a firmware conflict that—" "Silence," Merrick cut her off. "That cargo pallet could have ruptured a fuel line. We'd be fighting fires instead of launching aircraft." He stepped closer, lowering his voice slightly but still audible to those nearby. "You overstepped your authority because you think your technical knowledge trumps operational protocol. It doesn't." The deck had grown quieter, operations continuing but with all eyes occasionally darting toward the confrontation. Captain Blackwell remained a silent observer. "Get off my flight deck," Merrick continued. "You're restricted to quarters pending formal review. That's an order." Vale stood rigidly at attention. "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, she caught snippets of conversation from nearby crew members. Paper Pusher thought she was Top Gun. Always happens when they send these tech types to sea. She maintained her composure, walking with measured steps across the deck and into the island structure. Only when she was alone in the corridor did she allow her shoulders to slump slightly, the weight of the public humiliation settling upon her. In her quarters, Vale sat on the edge of her bunk, staring at the small photograph she kept beside it, herself in civilian clothes standing next to an older man in an admiral's uniform. Both were smiling in front of what appeared to be a classified facility, its details deliberately blurred in the background. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Lieutenant Embry Callisto, the ship's communications officer and perhaps Vale's only true friend aboard, stepped inside. Her expression was sympathetic but concerned. "Word travels fast on a carrier," Callisto said. "You okay?" "I've had better mornings." Callisto sat beside her. "Merrick's pushing for a formal reprimand. Says you violated chain of command, endangered flight operations." Vale shook her head. "I was trying to help. That jet has a firmware conflict in the new avionics package." She paused, then added quietly, "I know because I helped design it." Before Callisto could respond, the ship's PA system crackled to life. "Now hear this, now hear this. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Callisto jumped to her feet. "I've got to get to CIC." At the door, she hesitated. "Soren, be careful. Merrick has the captain's ear." As the door closed behind Callisto, Vale moved to her small workstation and activated the terminal. Despite her restricted status, her access codes still functioned. What she saw made her blood run cold. 3 Chinese destroyer groups, previously maintaining distance, were now on an intercept course with the carrier. And something else. Electronic signatures she recognized all too well. They were under attack, and no one on board realized yet just how serious it was. In the Combat Information Center, organized chaos reigned. Officers moved with practiced precision as tactical screens displayed the rapidly evolving situation. 3 planned destroyer groups have altered course, reported the tactical officer. They're moving to surround our position. Captain Blackwell studied the display grimly. Maintain current heading. Let's not appear provocative while we assess their intentions. Sir, called the communications officer, we're detecting jamming signals across multiple bands. Satellite uplink is degrading. Blackwell exchanged a look with Merrick. This isn't a coincidence. Sound general quarters. Already done, sir. I want our air wing ready to establish presence. No provocative maneuvers, but I want them to know we're watching. As officers carried out his orders, a junior lieutenant at one of the system stations frowned at his display. Sir, something strange happening with the weapons systems. Merrick moved to look over his shoulder. Explain. Diagnostic routines are running automatically. I didn't initiate them. Override it, Merrick ordered. Probably just a glitch from yesterday's systems update. The lieutenant's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sir, I can't. The system is rejecting my commands. Across the CIC, screens suddenly flickered, then stabilized. The ship's emblem was replaced by an unfamiliar insignia, a stylized Aegis shield with the number 9 embedded within it. Every terminal displayed the same message. Aegis 9 defense protocol initiated. Clearance level 0 required. What is Aegis 9? Blackwell demanded. And what's clearance level 0? Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. The weapons officer's voice was tight with controlled panic. Captain, missile hatches are opening. CIWS guns are rotating to active positions. Targeting systems are coming online. Sir, the ship is arming itself. Shut it down, Merrick ordered. I can't, sir. We're locked out. A communications officer called out, Captain, incoming transmission from the Pentagon. They've broken through the jamming. The main screen activated to reveal the Secretary of Defense, his expression grave. USS Truman, this is SecDef. We're tracking your system's activation. Has Aegis 9 initiated? Blackwell stepped forward. Sir, we don't know what Aegis 9 is. Our weapon systems have activated autonomously and we cannot regain control. The Secretary's expression shifted subtly. Where is Commander Vale? The CIC fell silent. Merrick cleared his throat. She's confined to quarters, sir, after an incident this morning. Get her to CIC immediately. She's the only one who can control the system. Blackwell signaled to a Marine at the door. Escort Commander Vale here now. As they waited, the tension in CIC was palpable. The tactical officer reported that the Chinese vessels were continuing to maneuver into position, now well within weapons range. The door to CIC slid open, and Vale entered, flanked by Marines. She took in the situation at a glance, her eyes moving efficiently across the displays showing the Aegis 9 activation and the Chinese fleet positions. The Secretary of Defense spoke directly to her. "Commander Vale, authentication code Sierra Tango Whiskey 940. Without hesitation, Vale responded, "Echo Lima Zulu 375, Mr. Secretary. Aegis 9 has detected coordinated electronic warfare attack consistent with preemptive strike protocols." The officers of CIC stared in disbelief as the Secretary addressed them all. "Captain Blackwell, Commander Soren Vale is not just a systems analyst. She's the chief architect of Aegis 9, the most advanced autonomous defense system ever created. When your ship was refitted last year, she personally oversaw its classified installation." A computerized voice emanated from the ship's systems. "Biometric confirmation. Vale, Soren E. Clearance level 0 recognized." Every screen in CIC shifted, displaying an unprecedented level of tactical data, enemy vessel signatures, weapon status, encrypted communications, and detection of stealthy objects that hadn't appeared on standard sensors. Merrick stepped forward, incredulous. "That's impossible. I've seen her service record." "You've seen what you were allowed to see, Commander," the Secretary replied coldly. Vale moved to the tactical station, her fingers flying across the controls with practiced ease. The same officers who had smirked at her humiliation hours before now watched in stunned silence as she took command of the carrier's defensive systems. "Aegis 9 detected a coordinated electronic warfare attack 17 minutes ago," she explained, her voice calm and professional. "The system identified it as matching the signature of a Chinese preemptive strike protocol. When multiple confirmation thresholds were met, it activated autonomously." She gestured to a portion of the tactical display that showed previously invisible signatures. "These are stealth drones, 12 of them, approaching from multiple vectors. Standard sensors can't detect them, but Aegis 9 can." Captain Blackwell moved beside her. "Options, Commander?" "The Chinese believe their electronic warfare is masking their approach. They don't know we can see them." Her fingers danced across the console. "I'm initiating a targeted electromagnetic pulse. It will disable the drones without firing a shot, and send a clear message that their stealth technology has been compromised." On the tactical display, the drone signatures blinked and then disappeared. Moments later, the Chinese vessels halted their advance. The Secretary of Defense nodded with approval. "Well done, Commander. Captain Blackwell, I strongly suggest you utilize Commander Vale's expertise until this situation is fully resolved." Blackwell studied Vale for a long moment, then addressed his crew. "Commander Vale has full tactical authority until this situation is resolved." As the Chinese vessels began a measured withdrawal, the officers of CIC looked at Vale with new eyes. The woman they had dismissed hours before now stood revealed as perhaps the most important person on the entire carrier. 2 hours later, Soren Vale stood alone on the flight deck. The crisis had passed, the Chinese vessels maintaining a respectful distance from the carrier group's newly established defensive perimeter. The afternoon sun gleamed off the deck, still busy with regular flight operations but now with an undercurrent of tension released. She heard footsteps approaching from behind, measured and deliberate. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Commander," Captain Blackwell said, coming to stand beside her. "Captain," she acknowledged. They stood in silence for a moment, watching an F-35 taxi into position for launch. "I owe you an apology," Blackwell finally said. "For this morning. I should have intervened." Vale kept her eyes forward. "You couldn't have known." "That's not an excuse." He turned to face her directly. "Why didn't you tell me who you really were?" She considered the question. "Because Aegis 9 was designed to respond to threats, not egos, including mine." She finally met his gaze. "The system works because it's invisible until needed." Blackwell nodded slowly. "Your security clearance is higher than mine." "Only for specific systems, sir." "Still." He shook his head in disbelief. "Pentagon tells me you've led 3 major black projects before this one, that your civilian education includes dual PhDs from MIT, that half the automated systems on this carrier have your code in them." Vale offered a small smile. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Their conversation was interrupted as Lieutenant Zafar Rihan approached, still in his flight suit from a recent patrol. Commander Vale, he said with newfound respect, I wanted to thank you. Not just for fixing my jet this morning, but for everything after. We might be in a shooting war right now if not for you. Before she could respond, other crew members began to approach. The same deck crew who had witnessed her humiliation now nodded respectfully. Chief Knox stepped forward. Commander, he said gruffly, the deck crew would be honored if you'd join us for chow later. Seems we have some things to learn about the systems we're working with. Vale nodded, touched by the gesture. I'd like that, Chief. As the impromptu gathering dispersed, Captain Blackwell handed her an official tablet. Your new orders. Your cover assignment as systems analyst is being maintained, but with expanded authority on tactical decisions. She scanned the document. And Commander Merrick? Has been fully briefed on your actual role. It was an educational experience for him. Blackwell's lips quirked in the ghost of a smile. I believe he's looking for you. As if on cue, Merrick approached from across the deck. His posture was rigid, his expression carefully neutral. Commander Vale, he began, his voice formal. I want to apologize for my conduct this morning. I made assumptions and acted on incomplete information. It was clearly difficult for him, but the apology seemed genuine. Vale nodded. Apology accepted, Commander. We all have our roles to play. Merrick hesitated, then added, the next time you see something that needs fixing on my flight deck, you have my permission to fix it, directly. Thank you, sir. As Merrick walked away, Vale felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She moved to the exact spot where she had been dressed down hours before, pausing briefly to acknowledge the moment. Then she continued forward with purpose. Later that evening, as the carrier continued its patrol through contested waters, Lieutenant Callisto found Vale in the officer's mess. So, Callisto said, sliding into the seat across from her friend. Secret weapon designer, huh? Were you ever going to mention that? Vale smiled. Classified. You know what's not classified? The way the entire ship is talking about you. Callisto leaned forward. You've become a legend in 12 hours flat. Not what I intended. Maybe not, but maybe it's what was needed. Callisto studied her friend. People like us, women in a place still dominated by men, sometimes we need to be seen, really seen. Vale considered this. I never asked for recognition. And that's exactly why you deserved it more than anyone else. The ship's intercom announced the evening watch change. Around them, officers and crew moved with renewed purpose, with many nodding respectfully toward Vale as they passed. The carrier continued its silent journey through dangerous waters, its hidden guardian now visible to all. In the days that followed, the USS Truman maintained its patrol route through the South China Sea. The Chinese naval forces kept their distance, a new understanding established between potential adversaries. Word had spread quickly through military channels about the carrier's previously unknown defensive capabilities, though the specifics of Aegis 9 remained highly classified. On the morning of the fourth day after the incident, Vale was summoned to the captain's ready room. She found not only Captain Blackwell waiting, but also Admiral Jensen, commander of the 7th Fleet, appearing via secure video conference. Commander Vale, the admiral began without preamble. The Pentagon is quite interested in a full briefing on Aegis 9's performance during the recent incident. I understand you've been monitoring system diagnostics since activation. Yes, sir, Vale replied. The autonomous response exceeded design parameters by 14%. We detected and neutralized stealth platforms that weren't part of our original threat matrix. Impressive, the admiral nodded. What's your assessment of the Chinese response? They've recognized we have capabilities they didn't account for, sir. Their electronic warfare systems have been recalibrated 3 times since the incident, but they're essentially shooting in the dark. They know we detected something, but not how. Captain Blackwell interjected. Commander Vale has implemented a rolling encryption protocol that masks our detection capabilities. Even if they're monitoring our systems, they'll see only standard radar and sonar functions. The admiral looked impressed. The Pentagon wants to deploy Aegis 9 fleet-wide, Commander. How soon can implementation begin? Vale took a deep breath. With respect, Admiral, I'd advise against immediate wide deployment. The system performed well on the Truman because I personally supervised integration with the carrier's existing architecture. Each vessel has unique configurations. Rushing deployment could create vulnerabilities. A flash of impatience crossed the Admiral's face. Commander, we're facing increasingly aggressive posturing across the Pacific. The tactical advantage Aegis 9 provides could be decisive. I understand, sir. But Aegis 9 isn't just hardware and software. It's a philosophy of defense that requires specialized training and understanding. The system makes autonomous decisions based on complex threat assessment algorithms. Without proper integration, those decisions could be flawed. The Admiral and Blackwell exchanged glances. Finally, the Admiral nodded. Very well, Commander. What do you propose? A phased deployment, sir, beginning with the carriers. Each installation personally supervised by myself or one of the 5 other designers with Level 0 clearance. Simultaneously, we establish a training program for select officers on each vessel. And the timeline? 6 months for the carrier groups, another 6 for the rest of the fleet. The Admiral frowned. The Pentagon won't like the delay. Sir, Vale said firmly, Aegis 9 represents the most sophisticated autonomous combat system ever deployed. If we rush this, we risk not only system failures but potentially catastrophic false positives. After a moment's consideration, the Admiral nodded. I'll support your recommendation, Commander, but I want you personally overseeing the implementation. Effective immediately, you're reassigned as Special Technical Advisor to 7th Fleet, with temporary duty stations as required for Aegis 9 deployment. Thank you, sir. After the Admiral signed off, Captain Blackwell turned to Vale with a wry smile. Congratulations on your promotion, Commander. Though I suspect this was the plan all along. Vale allowed herself a small smile. Let's just say contingencies were in place, Captain. You'll be missed aboard the Truman, Commander. The crew has taken quite a liking to you, especially since they discovered you're not just a systems analyst. It's been an honor serving with them, sir, even the challenging parts. That afternoon, Vale found herself packing her personal effects in preparation for transfer to the fleet command ship. A knock at her door revealed Commander Merrick. Commander, he said, may I have a word? She gestured him inside. Of course. Merrick seemed uncomfortable, shifting his weight slightly before speaking. I understand you're transferring to Fleet Command. Yes. Special Technical Advisor role for Aegis 9 deployment. He nodded. Well deserved. He paused, clearly struggling with something. I wanted to speak with you again about our initial, misunderstanding. We've already addressed that, Commander. No need to revisit it. There is, though. Merrick's voice took on an unexpected earnestness. I've been in the Navy 22 years, Commander. Rose through the ranks when things were different. When someone like you would never have been given the opportunities you've earned. Vale remained silent, allowing him to continue. What I'm trying to say is that I was wrong. Not just about your authority or your capabilities, but about my assumptions. You could have easily used your position to make things difficult for me after the truth came out. You didn't. That wouldn't have served any purpose, Commander. Perhaps not, but it would have been justified. He extended his hand. I've learned more from you in 4 days than from many officers I've served with for years. Thank you for that lesson. Vale shook his hand firmly. The best officers are the ones who can admit when they're wrong, Commander. I suspect you've always been better than you showed that morning on the flight deck. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Maybe so. He moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing, Commander. The crew has organized a small farewell gathering in the officers' mess at 1900. Nothing formal. They'd be honored if you'd attend. I'll be there. After Merrick left, Vale returned to her packing, her thoughts turning to the challenges ahead. Implementing Aegis 9 across the fleet would be a monumental task, fraught with technical and organizational obstacles. But she had overcome greater challenges before. Her gaze fell on the photograph of herself and the Admiral, her father, standing before the research facility where Aegis 9 had first been conceived. He had always taught her that true leadership wasn't about rank or recognition, but about quiet competence and unwavering integrity. She placed the photograph carefully in her bag. The USS Truman had taught her an unexpected lesson. Sometimes, to truly lead, one had to be seen. Her days of working entirely in the shadows were over. There would be other carriers, other crews, other commanders like Merrick who would need to understand not just the technology she brought, but the philosophy behind it. As evening approached, Vale prepared for her farewell gathering, reflecting on how quickly things had changed. From humiliation on the flight deck to respected advisor in less than a week. The path forward would not be easy, but for the first time in her career, she would walk it not as a shadow, but as a visible leader. 6 months later, Soren Vale stood in the Combat Information Center of the USS Reagan, the fifth carrier to receive the Aegis 9 upgrade. The installation had gone smoothly, more efficiently than the previous deployments as her team refined their processes with each iteration. Around her, officers and technicians worked with quiet efficiency, many of them graduates of the intensive training program she had established. "Final diagnostic sequence complete, Commander," reported Lieutenant Commander Patel, her second-in-command and one of the few other engineers with detailed knowledge of Aegis 9's architecture. "All systems green across the board." "Thank you, Rajiv." Vale studied the holographic display showing the Reagan's defensive envelope, now significantly expanded with the new system's capabilities. "Have the bridge and air wing commanders received their final briefing packages?" "Yes, ma'am. Captain Holden has requested your presence on the bridge once we're finished here." Vale nodded, making a final annotation in her technical log. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of activity, traveling between vessels, supervising installations, and training command crews. What had begun as a classified system on a single carrier was now becoming the backbone of the fleet's defensive capabilities. On her way to the bridge, she passed crew members who nodded with respect. Her reputation had preceded her to each new vessel. The story of what had happened aboard the Truman had spread throughout the Navy, embellished with each retelling until it had taken on almost mythical proportions. Captain Elena Holden, the Reagan's commanding officer, greeted Vale as she entered the bridge. Unlike many of the older captains, Holden had embraced Aegis 9 from the beginning, recognizing its strategic importance. "Commander Vale, your team continues to impress," Holden said, gesturing toward the tactical displays. "The system integration is even more seamless than I expected." "Thank you, Captain. Your crew's preparation made our job significantly easier." Holden led Vale to a quieter corner of the bridge. "I received word from Fleet Command this morning. The Secretary of the Navy will be visiting next week to observe Aegis 9 in action personally." Vale raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected. We haven't scheduled a live fire demonstration for the Reagan yet." Apparently, the success of the program has attracted attention at the highest levels. The Secretary wants to see firsthand what all the excitement is about. Holden paused. "There's more. Admiral Jensen mentioned they're considering you for the Naval Distinguished Service Medal." Vale blinked in surprise. "That's not necessary, Captain. I'm just doing my job." "A job that's revolutionizing naval defense, Commander. The incident with the Truman demonstrated Aegis 9's capabilities in a real-world scenario. Since then, we've seen a 30% reduction in aggressive posturing from potential adversaries in regions where Aegis 9-equipped vessels are deployed." "The system is performing as designed," Vale said modestly. "It's more than that, and you know it." Holden's expression grew serious. Before the Truman incident, there were voices in the Pentagon questioning the investment in autonomous defense systems. Some flag officers were pushing for more conventional approaches. Your system proved its value under fire, and now those same voices are its strongest advocates. Before Vale could respond, the tactical officer called out, "Captain, incoming priority message from 7th Fleet Command." Holden moved swiftly to the communications station, Vale following closely behind. The officer handed Holden a secure tablet. As she read, her expression tightened. "Commander Vale, you're needed back on the Truman, urgently." "The Truman? What's happened?" "They've encountered a situation similar to your previous incident, but the system is behaving differently. Captain Blackwell specifically requested your assistance." Vale's mind raced through possibilities. Aegis 9 shouldn't be triggering without legitimate threat signatures. Apparently it's not fully activating. Captain Blackwell reports the system is in some kind of diagnostic loop, displaying messages about authentication failures. "I need to get there immediately." "Already arranged. A helicopter will transport you to the Truman within the hour. They're currently 60 nautical miles southeast of our position." 90 minutes later, Vale was escorted onto the Truman's bridge. The atmosphere was tense, officers moving with heightened alertness. Captain Blackwell greeted her with obvious relief. "Commander Vale, thank you for coming so quickly." "What's the situation, Captain?" Blackwell led her to the tactical display. 3 hours ago, Aegis 9 began running automatic diagnostics. Initially, we thought it was routine, but then it started displaying authentication failures and requesting clearance level 0. When we attempted to override, the system locked us out of key defensive systems. Vale frowned. That shouldn't be possible without a confirmed threat matrix. That's just it, Blackwell said. We're not detecting any threats. Standard sensors show nothing unusual in our vicinity. And the Chinese? Maintaining normal patrol patterns well outside our defensive perimeter. No unusual electronic signatures or communications. Vale studied the tactical display. I need access to the primary Aegis 9 terminal. In the Combat Information Center, Vale found Commander Merrick directing efforts to regain control of the ship's defensive systems. He looked up as she entered, relief evident in his expression. Commander Vale, I never thought I'd be so happy to see you on my combat deck again. Likewise, Commander, talk me through what you're seeing. As Merrick explained the symptoms, Vale's concern grew. The behavior didn't match any of Aegis 9's designed protocols. She moved to the primary terminal and entered her authentication codes. Biometric confirmation, Vale Soren E, clearance level 0 recognized, announced the system. Immediately the screen shifted to display Aegis 9's internal diagnostic interface, a level of access no one else on the ship possessed. Vale's fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through layers of security and system architecture. There, she said after several minutes of intense concentration, someone's been in the system. Hackers? Merrick asked. Not exactly. Look at these access logs. Someone with legitimate credentials has modified the threat assessment parameters. She pointed to a line of code. They've essentially taught the system to ignore certain electronic signatures that would normally trigger an alert. Blackwell leaned closer. What kind of signatures? The same type we encountered in the previous incident with the Chinese drones. Aegis 9 is trying to warn us, but its alert protocols have been suppressed. Sabotage? Merrick asked quietly. More likely espionage, Vale replied. Someone wants to blind us to specific threats. She continued typing, restoring the system's original parameters and adding additional security protocols. There, that should... She stopped mid-sentence as new data flowed across the screen. With the original detection parameters restored, Aegis 9 was suddenly registering multiple threat signatures approaching from the southwest, signatures that hadn't appeared on the standard sensors. Captain, she said urgently, we have incoming stealth platforms, similar to the previous incident, but with advanced masking technology. They're already inside our conventional detection perimeter. Blackwell immediately moved to action. Combat stations, prepare defensive measures. Wait, Vale said, studying the data more closely. These aren't Chinese signatures. The electronic profile is completely different. On the main tactical display, Aegis 9 highlighted the approaching vessels with identifying markers. Russian Karakurt-class corvettes, operating in stealth mode and well outside their usual patrol areas. What are Russian vessels doing here? Merrick wondered aloud. And how did they get so close without detection? More importantly, Blackwell added, who modified our systems to ignore them? Vale's fingers continued moving across the keyboard. The access credentials used to modify Aegis 9 belonged to Commander Lewis Hartford. Hartford? Blackwell frowned. He was transferred to Pentagon Intelligence 3 months ago. After having full access to Aegis 9 during its initial deployment, Vale confirmed. Captain, I recommend immediate communication with Fleet Command. This goes beyond a single security breach. Within hours, the situation had escalated to the highest levels of naval command. The Russian vessels, once detected, had quickly withdrawn, denying any hostile intent and claiming routine patrol activities. But the security implications were profound. Admiral Jensen arrived personally aboard the Truman to assess the situation. In the captain's ready room, he met with Blackwell, Vale, and the ship's senior officers. Commander Hartford has been taken into custody, the admiral informed them. Preliminary investigation suggests he's been selling classified information for at least 2 years. The Russians were particularly interested in Aegis 9's detection capabilities. They wanted to test their stealth technology against our newest system, Vale surmised. Exactly. And Hartford gave them the perfect opportunity by modifying the threat parameters. Jensen turned to Vale. If you hadn't restored the system when you did, Commander, we would never have known they were there, or that we had a traitor in our midst. Sir, this raises concerns about all Aegis 9 installations, Vale said. We need to verify that no other systems have been compromised. Already underway. Your team is implementing emergency security protocols fleet-wide. The Admiral's expression was grim. This incident underscores both Aegis 9's importance and its vulnerability. The The system worked as designed, detecting a threat even when someone tried to blind it. But we need to ensure this can't happen again. Vale nodded thoughtfully. The current authentication system relies too heavily on traditional credentials. We need to implement continuous behavioral authentication, monitoring how users interact with the system to detect anomalous patterns. Can that be done without compromising operational efficiency? Yes, sir. In fact, I've been developing such protocols as part of Aegis 10. The Admiral raised an eyebrow. Aegis 10? That project hasn't even been officially announced yet. Vale allowed herself a small smile. I prefer to stay ahead of problems rather than merely responding to them, Admiral. After the meeting concluded, Vale found herself once again on the flight deck of the Truman, standing in the exact spot where, 6 months earlier, she had faced public humiliation before her true role was revealed. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Captain Blackwell joined her, gazing out at the horizon where the Russian vessels had disappeared. Twice now, you've saved this ship without firing a shot. The system did what it was designed to do, Captain. The system did what you designed it to do, he corrected. There's a difference. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Blackwell spoke again. The Secretary of the Navy has requested that you brief the Joint Chiefs next week on the security implications of this incident. Vale nodded. I expected as much. There's more. Admiral Jensen mentioned they're fast-tracking your promotion to captain. This caught Vale by surprise. I haven't completed the standard command track. Apparently, designing and implementing the Navy's most advanced defensive system while uncovering a major espionage operation counts for something. Blackwell smiled. Congratulations, Captain Vale. She accepted the news with characteristic modesty. Thank you, sir, though I admit it wasn't the career path I anticipated when I first came aboard. Few of us end up where we expect, Commander. The best officers adapt to circumstances and find ways to excel wherever they're placed. He gestured toward the busy flight deck. 6 months ago, half the crew didn't know your name. Today, there isn't a sailor aboard who wouldn't follow your orders without question. As they watched flight operations continue, Lieutenant Rehan's F-35 touched down perfectly on the deck. The young pilot had become one of the carrier's most reliable aviators, his confidence bolstered by his role in the original incident that had revealed Vale's true identity. What happens now? Blackwell asked. With Aegis 9, Aegis 10, and whatever else you've got hidden up your sleeve. Vale considered the question. We adapt. Technology evolves. Threats evolve. Our responses must evolve as well. And you? Will you continue moving from ship to ship, implementing systems from the shadows? She smiled. I think those days are behind me, Captain. Sometimes the most effective leadership happens in plain sight, where others can see not just what you've built, but why you built it. As the sun began to set over the South China Sea, Vale reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From humiliation to recognition, from the shadows to the light. The system she designed would continue to protect the fleet, but perhaps her greatest contribution would be inspiring the next generation of officers to understand that true authority came not from rank or position, but from knowledge, integrity, and quiet competence. Around her, the carrier continued its mission, its crew moving with renewed purpose and confidence. They knew now what she had always known, that sometimes the most powerful weapon in any arsenal is the one person nobody expected, standing precisely where they need to be when the moment calls.